Hello everyone, I am the Sports Wiz 101, and today, with the NFL season coming up, I am going to be predicting the NFC. Now, last week, I gave you my predictions for the AFC. You can go ahead and check out that video if you haven't already. Next week, I'm going to be trying to predict the playoffs that these predictions would set up. But this week, it's the NFC, and we'll be starting with the NFC East. In the NFC East, I think that whoever wins this division is going to have the worst record of any division winner that is, in the NFL. I think the clear favorite here is the Dallas Cowboys. And that's mainly because I think they have the best and most consistent quarterback in the entire division. Second place, I would say Washington. They're probably the team I'd pick if Dak ever gets injured this year. I just don't think that Ryan Fitzpatrick is consistent enough for Washington to be the winner. Also, fun fact, if Washington were to win the division this year, it'd be the first time since the 2003 and 2004 seasons that someone has been a repeat winner in this division. Washington won last year. If they win again this year, they would be a repeat winner. Let's see. Then there's the Giants. I've seen them get a decent amount of hype around the team, and maybe it's just that I don't have a high opinion of Daniel Jones, but I just don't see it. I just don't see how the Giants will be that big a playoff contender. Yes, I know they were in the division race going to the last week of the season, and they would have made the playoffs if Washington lost week 17. Yeah. They still were 6-10. You don't really deserve to make the playoffs if you're 6-10. Then you have the Eagles, who, sure, they're going to suck, but it's going to be an interesting kind of suck. They're probably going to be the most interesting bad team in the NFL this year. So, with that said, obviously I think there's only one team in this division make the playoffs. That's the Cowboys. They win the division, and they'll take the 4 seed in the NFC. So with that, let's move on to the NFC North. Okay, so in the NFC North, Packers, they're the clear favorites. But here's a bit of a hot take. I think the Packers would be the favorites to win this division, even if Rodgers was not the quarterback for them. I think they would win this division even if Jordan Love was their quarterback. I just have that much faith in this team's roster and this team's coaching staff to be able to get them to a division title even if Jordan Love was their quarterback. That being said, Aaron Rodgers does still help them. He gives them a better shot at winning the Super Bowl, so it's going to be glad. You're going to be glad if you're a Packers fan that get Aaron Rodgers at least this year, but who knows what his future is after this year. Elsewhere, we have the Vikings, who are in the same boat as the Giants. They're getting a decent amount of hype. I just don't see it. I mean, until I see an improved defense actually play like an improved defense, I'm not going to look at the Vikings as a potential playoff contender like many others have seen them. Then you look at the Chicago Bears. I think they missed the playoffs. And while for most people that statement would not be too surprising, you gotta think about it's me that's saying this. Me, who said a couple of years ago he thought the Bears were going to go 15-1. A guy who said last year he thought the Bears were going to win the NFC North. In other words, I've been fairly high on the Bears in recent years, and this year I'm definitely not picking them to go to the playoffs. Then you got the Detroit Lions, who should be a top 5 draft pick next year, which is going to kind of suck because I kind of like Dan Campbell as the coach there, but Lions are just going to suck, especially after their downgrade at quarterback with Jared Goff now running things over there. So, like I said, Packers first, Vikings second, Bears 3rd, Lions 4th. Packers the only one that make the postseason, and they'll do it as the 3 seed. So with that, let's move on to the NFC South. So the NFC South is another division that I think has a clear-cut favorite. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now think about this. First of all, last year was supposed to be their building chemistry season, and then this year they would be able to put it all together. But last year was their Super Bowl season. Think about how dangerous they're going to be this year when they've actually had the chemistry built up. And then, think about this. Last year, I was going crazy about how the Chiefs were returning 20 of their 22 stars from the Super Bowl or something like that, and talking about how that made them Super Bowl favorites. Well, the Bucs are returning all of their starters. This is going to be one of the most dangerous teams in the entire NFL, and I expect them to get home field in the NFC this year. That's right, number 1 seed for Tom Brady and the Bucs. But what's going to be really interesting about this division is the second place race. I mean, you have the Saints. This is a team that lost their legendary quarterback, Drew Brees, due to a retirement. I don't think they're going to have too big a drop-off. I mean, it's not like they're going to suck or anything. They're going to be more mediocre this year. I wouldn't be surprised if they were in the race for the 7th seed at the end of it. I'm thinking they finished somewhere around 9 wins. But I wouldn't be surprised if they don't finish second, but instead it's Carolina. Now, Carolina is undergoing what I have called the rule route. And that would be year 1, your team kind of sucks. Year 2, you're mediocre. And year 3, you put it all together and ready to win games. Well, Carolina is in the 2nd year of the Matt Rule era. So, they need to at least see some mediocre football in order to get to that rule route place that they need to be in after the 2nd season. And I think they can do that. Especially after bringing in Sam Darnold. I think he can be an upgrade from what they had at quarterback with Teddy Bridgewater. So I wouldn't be surprised if Carolina was 2nd place. In fact, that's actually my prediction. Carolina, 2nd place in the South. But then you have Atlanta, who's a bit of a dark horse. I'm having a tough time reading Atlanta. I mean, they keep Matt Ryan, which would seem to indicate that they're trying to win now. But then they trade away Julio Jones to the Titans, which would seem to indicate they're trying to win later. I'm just not sure where the Falcons are trying to go with their franchise, but I'm going to pick them to finish last. They probably finish with somewhere around 6 wins. So I think Tampa Bay wins 1st place in the division, followed by Carolina, then New Orleans, and then Atlanta. Tampa is the only one of those teams to make the playoffs. They get home field as the top seed. Now, if you'll notice, I have not awarded any of the wild cards to any teams yet. And that's because they're all going to the NFC West, which is our next division. That's right. The NFC West is going to have all 3 wild cards. That is my prediction. And if that prediction comes true, then this would be the first division in NFL history to send every single team to the playoffs. And this is a division that I have tussled over. I think this is the toughest to predict division, to be honest. At various points of the offseason, I have thought that any and every team in this division could win the division. So, let's start with the team I think will finish last, the Arizona Cardinals. Now, how good you think the Cardinals are going to be is probably going to be dependent on if you think their acquisitions still have stuff left in the tank. For example, do you think J.J. Watt still has something left in the tank? Or has he just basically done everything he can do? Is he washed, basically? I think J.J. still has something left in the tank. So, I do think the Cardinals will be a legitimate threat in the postseason. That being said, I can admit they still have some question marks especially in their secondary after Patrick Peterson left. They'll also be without Kenyon Drake after he left to the Raiders. So their running game might be a bit more of a question mark than it was last year. But I think the Cardinals finish last in this division. That's still good enough for them to get the 7th seed, which would pair them up with the winner of this division. I'll reveal that later. Alright, then you have the Seattle Seahawks. I think they finished 3rd in this division. That would be the 6th seed and would send them to Lambeau for a wild card round matchup. With Seattle, look, we know they're going to be good, but it just seems to me that they've always played like the team they can be over the first half of the season, but then they play more like the team they actually are in the second half of the season. They can be a Super Bowl contender, but something always seems to get in the way of that. And for that, I am not putting them in the top 2 because I think they need to play some consistently good football to be in the top 2 of this division. Having said they're still 3rd, that's good for the 6th seed in the NFC according to my predictions. Alright. Then we have the 2nd place team, which I'm going to go with the LA Rams. 1st and 2nd, really close in my opinion. I could see you flip-flopping these if you really wanted to, but for me, I'm going with the Rams in 2nd place. Why? Well, remember, they lost their defensive coordinator, Staley, to the Chargers. He's now their head coach. So this defense is probably going to be taking a bit of a step back. That being said, the offense is going to take a big step forward after they brought in Matthew Stafford in the trade with Detroit. So I think this team's going to take a step forward, but the defense taking a step back is going to cost them the NFC West. But it's still good for the 5 seed for the Rams, and that would send them to Dallas to play the Cowboys. Which of course means the 49ers are the team I think wins this division, and they get the 2 seed and a home game against the Cardinals. So, San Francisco. They've always been either really, really good or really, really injured. It's never neither, and it's never both. And I'm never one to predict injuries, so I'm going with the really, really good option for San Francisco. Aside from that, I have huge faith in their coach, Kyle Shanahan, to get this team where they need to be. So I think they win this division, they get the 2 seed, and they host the Cardinals. So here's how the playoffs look due to my predictions. It'll be Tampa Bay gets home field, and in the wild card round is Cardinals at 49ers, Seahawks at Packers, and then Rams at Cowboys. So with that, those are my predictions for the NFC. If you liked it, please like this video, subscribe, and I'll be back next week when I try to predict the playoffs I have set up with these predictions. I've been the Sports Wiz, and I will see you all later.